In the heart of medieval Europe, a powerful empire ruled by African black kings changed the course of history. The Moors, African Muslims, shaped the culture, science, and politics of Europe for centuries, yet their influence is often overlooked. How did these remarkable leaders come to dominate Europe, and why is their story so rarely told? You may have learned about the fall of Rome, the rise of European monarchies, and the Renaissance, but there's a story that's often left out: the era of the Moors. This era saw African rulers at the peak of their power, spreading influence from Spain to Italy, from Portugal to France. Their kingdoms were hubs of knowledge, trade, and culture, yet many of their accomplishments remain hidden from the history books. At the height of their reign, the Moors controlled vast territories in what we now call Spain and Portugal, a region known as Al-Andalus. They didn't just rule. They transformed Europe in ways that would echo through the centuries. From bringing new agricultural techniques and architectural wonders to advancing mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, the Moors had an undeniable impact. Yet the full scope of their contributions has largely been erased or downplayed in the historical narrative. So who were the Moors? How did they come to rule parts of Europe for over 700 years? And why have so many people never heard about the African kings and queens who held Europe in their grasp? These questions aren't just about uncovering forgotten history. They're about challenging the narratives that have shaped our understanding of the past. The truth is that the history of the Moors is one of power, culture, and resilience, qualities that have been overshadowed by the more dominant narratives of European monarchies. In this video, we'll dive deep into the real history of the Moors, how they came to power, their golden age, and the legacy they left behind. We'll explore how African kings ruled Europe, influencing everything from architecture to science, and how their reign fundamentally shaped the future of Europe and the world. You'll discover that the Moors didn't just live in history. They were the architects of it. By the end of this video, you'll have a deeper understanding of the Moors' incredible contributions to European civilization, and you might just see European history in a new light. So let's explore the untold story of the Moors and uncover the truth about how these African black kings ruled Europe. The Moors were not a single, unified group, but a diverse collection of peoples from North Africa who shared one common thread: the Islamic faith. This group included Berbers, Arabs, and other African Muslims. They hailed from regions that spanned modern-day Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, areas rich in culture and history long before their rise to power in Europe. The story of the Moors begins in the 7th century when Islam rapidly spread across the Arabian Peninsula. This new religion, founded by the Prophet Muhammad, brought with it not only a spiritual revolution, but also a cultural and political one. Within a century of Muhammad's death, the Islamic Empire stretched from Spain in the west to India in the east, largely thanks to the expansion efforts of various Islamic dynasties. It was the Berbers, a North African ethnic group, who played a crucial role in the spread of Islam into Europe. In 711 AD, a Berber general named Tariq ibn Ziyad led the Muslim forces across the Strait of Gibraltar, marking the beginning of Muslim rule in the Iberian Peninsula. Their arrival was not just a military conquest. It was a cultural and intellectual invasion that would reshape the region for centuries. The Moors were not simply conquerors. They brought with them advanced knowledge in fields like agriculture, engineering, medicine, mathematics, and astronomy, all of which were about to revolutionize European society. The name Moor itself, however, is often used in a somewhat vague sense. It is a broad term that historians and scholars use to describe various Islamic and North African groups who settled in Iberia. At its core, the Moors were primarily Berbers from the region of North Africa, but as time went on, Arabs and other African groups joined in the rule. Despite their diverse origins, they formed a powerful political and cultural force that would leave a profound mark on Europe. One of the most interesting aspects of the Moors' history in Europe is how they blended their own rich cultural traditions with the people they encountered in Iberia. They didn't simply impose their rule. They integrated, adapted, and transformed the lands they governed. This led to a flourishing of culture, science, and art that would serve as the foundation for much of what would later be considered the European Renaissance. As the Moors settled in Iberia, they established the Umayyad Caliphate of Cordoba, a thriving center of learning and culture that became one of the most advanced cities in the medieval world. At its peak, Cordoba was home to over 1 million people and boasted the largest library in the world, containing hundreds of thousands of books, a rarity in the Middle Ages. The Moors' contributions weren't confined to just intellectual pursuits. Their innovations in agriculture, such as the introduction of irrigation systems, new crops like rice and citrus fruits, and techniques that helped cultivate the land more effectively, would forever change European farming practices. Their architectural feats, like the construction of the Alhambra in Granada, showcased their mastery in design, blending Islamic and local influences in stunning, intricate ways. The Moors didn't just bring change, they brought a civilization that was ahead of its time, with knowledge and advancements that would inspire Europe for generations to come. The Battle of Guadalete in 711 AD marks a pivotal moment in European history. It was here that Tariq ibn Ziyad, a Berber general, led his forces across the Strait of Gibraltar into what is now Spain. The Muslim army, vastly outnumbered by the Visigothic forces, decisively defeated King Roderick, the last Visigothic king of Spain. This battle opened the door for the Moors to expand their influence over much of the Iberian Peninsula. In the aftermath of the battle, the Moors swiftly moved to take control of key cities, including Toledo, Cordoba, and Seville. The initial conquest was remarkably swift, with large parts of the Iberian Peninsula falling under Moorish rule within just a few years. Within a few decades, the Moors had established a thriving, multi-ethnic society that blended Muslim, Christian, and Jewish communities, each contributing to the cultural and intellectual growth of the region. The establishment of the Umayyad Caliphate in Cordoba marked the beginning of a new era in Spain. Under the leadership of Abd al-Rahman I, a member of the exiled Umayyad dynasty, the Moors built one of the most advanced societies of the medieval world. Cordoba quickly became the cultural, economic, and intellectual heart of the region, rivaling other great cities like Baghdad and Cairo. The influence of the Moors stretched far beyond their military prowess. The city of Cordoba was an epicenter of knowledge and innovation, where scholars from all over the world gathered to study and share ideas. Libraries in Cordoba housed tens of thousands of texts, many of which were works of classical antiquity that had been lost to the rest of Europe. The Moors preserved these ancient texts and translated them into Arabic, allowing for the rediscovery of Greek and Roman knowledge in the Western world. But the Moors didn't just preserve the past, they built upon it. The introduction of advanced irrigation systems revolutionized agriculture, allowing for the cultivation of crops like rice, citrus fruits, and sugar that would forever change European cuisine and agriculture. In fact, many of the agricultural techniques introduced by the Moors are still used in Spain and Portugal today. In addition to agriculture, the Moors brought an unprecedented level of sophistication to engineering, architecture, and science. The Great Mosque of Cordoba, one of the most stunning examples of Islamic architecture, was constructed during this time. Its intricate designs, including the famous horseshoe arches, would influence architectural styles across Europe and the Mediterranean for centuries to come. The Moors also introduced groundbreaking scientific advancements. In medicine, they laid the foundation for modern surgical techniques, and their innovations in astronomy were instrumental in shaping European exploration and navigation during the Renaissance. Figures like Ibn Rushd, Averroes, and Ibn Sina, Avicenna, became famous throughout the medieval world for their philosophical and scientific works, which would later inspire European thinkers like Thomas Aquinas and others during the Renaissance. The spread of Moorish influence in Spain wasn't just about military conquest. It was about creating a rich, vibrant society that would inspire generations to come. The Moors ruled not only with power, but with an eye toward progress, innovation, and the advancement of knowledge. Their rule would leave a profound legacy that continued to shape European history for centuries, even as their political power waned. The Golden Age of Al-Andalus, which lasted from the 8th to the 12th centuries, represents one of the most remarkable periods in world history. It was a time when the Moors, under their various dynasties, transformed Spain into a beacon of culture, knowledge, and tolerance that would influence the entire Western world for centuries to come. At the heart of this golden age was the city of Córdoba. By the 10th century, Córdoba had become the largest and most prosperous city in Europe, surpassing even Constantinople and Baghdad. It was a metropolis that represented the pinnacle of Islamic civilization at the time, attracting scholars, poets, architects, and artists from all over the world. The city's streets were lined with libraries, universities, and hospitals, and its markets were teeming with exotic goods and spices from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. One of the most remarkable achievements of the Moors during this period was their dedication to knowledge and learning. The Moors were not only masters of the sciences, but also avid preservers and translators of ancient Greek and Roman texts. In fact, the preservation of classical knowledge was one of the most significant contributions the Moors made to the Renaissance. Works by Aristotle, Ptolemy, and Galen, texts that had been lost to Europe during the Dark Ages, were translated into Arabic and studied rigorously by scholars in Al-Andalus. This exchange of knowledge was not just one way. While European scholars learned from the Moors themselves were eager to learn from other cultures. Córdoba, for instance, became a melting pot of ideas, where Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived side by side, often collaborating on scientific and philosophical projects. This multi-religious society contributed to an atmosphere of intellectual curiosity and open exchange that was rare for the time. In medicine, the Moors made groundbreaking advancements. The renowned physician and philosopher Ibn Sina, known as Avicenna in the West, wrote the Canon of Medicine, a text that would become the standard medical reference in both the Islamic world and medieval Europe for centuries. The Moors also advanced the understanding of diseases, surgical techniques, and the importance of hygiene, ideas that would later influence the development of modern medicine. In astronomy, the Moors were far ahead of their European counterparts. They constructed advanced observatories, and figures like Al-Zarqali, Arzakel, created accurate astronomical charts that helped guide navigation and exploration in later centuries. Their work in mathematics was equally impressive. The Moors introduced the concept of zero and algebra to Europe, as well as advancements in geometry and trigonometry that would later lay the groundwork for the scientific revolution. In the arts, the Moors left a lasting legacy in architecture, particularly in the design of mosques, palaces, and gardens. The Alhambra, a stunning palace complex in Granada, is perhaps the most famous example of Moorish architecture, known for its intricate carvings, beautiful courtyards, and flowing water features. The geometric patterns and arabesques that adorned Moorish buildings influenced European art and design for centuries, especially during the Renaissance. Despite the relative peace and intellectual prosperity in Al-Andalus, the Golden Age eventually came to an end. The decline began in the 11th century, when the once unified Muslim territories of Spain fractured into smaller competing kingdoms. This fragmentation, along with the rise of the Christian Reconquista in the north, began to weaken Moorish control over Iberia. Nevertheless, the impact of the Moors on Europe during their Golden Age cannot be overstated. The intellectual, cultural, and scientific advancements they brought to Spain not only shaped the future of the Iberian Peninsula, but also laid the foundations for the Renaissance that would later sweep across Europe. The Moors were not just military conquerors. They were also skilled diplomats and rulers who established a vast and intricate political system. Their leadership and governance allowed them to maintain control over large parts of Spain for centuries, creating a multicultural society that was unique for its time. The key to their success was not just in their armies, but in the powerful and visionary leaders who steered their empire. Among the most notable Moorish figures was Tariq ibn Ziyad, the Berber general who led the Muslim forces in their conquest of the Iberian Peninsula in 711 AD. Tariq's victory at the Battle of Guadalete paved the way for the rapid expansion of Moorish influence in Spain. His leadership was both military and strategic, and his ability to unite different peoples under the banner of Islam was key to the success of the early Muslim conquests. Tariq's story is legendary, not just for his military achievements, but also for his role in laying the foundation for a flourishing civilization in Iberia. Following Tariq, Abd al-Rahman I, an exiled member of the Umayyad dynasty, became one of the most important figures in the history of Al-Andalus. After the fall of the Umayyad Caliphate in Damascus, Abd al-Rahman I fled to Iberia and established the independent Emirate of Cordoba in 756 AD. Under his leadership, Cordoba grew into a powerful and prosperous center of culture and learning. Abd al-Rahman's reign was marked by political stability, military success, and cultural renaissance. He built an empire that would thrive for centuries, bringing prosperity and intellectual achievement to the region. Abd al-Rahman's descendants continued to rule Cordoba for generations, each adding to the grandeur of the city and the empire. Abd al-Rahman III, for instance, declared himself caliph in 929 AD, elevating the status of the emirate to a caliphate and making Cordoba one of the most influential cities in the world. His reign marked the height of Moorish power in Spain, where the economy thrived, cities flourished, and cultural exchange between Muslims, Christians, and Jews reached its peak. The Moors didn't just bring military strength and governance, they also encouraged innovation and scientific progress. Under the rule of these influential leaders, Al-Andalus became a haven for scholars and intellectuals from all over the world. Figures like Averroes, Ibn Rushd, and Maimonides ibn Maimon became legendary thinkers who bridged the gap between ancient Greek philosophy and Islamic thought, and their works would later influence European philosophers such as Thomas Aquinas during the Renaissance. The Moorish kings also implemented policies of religious tolerance, allowing Christians and Jews to live under Islamic rule with relative freedom, as long as they paid a special tax. This policy allowed for the flourishing of a diverse and harmonious society where different cultures and religions coexisted peacefully, something that was quite rare in medieval Europe. The influence of these rulers can still be seen today in the magnificent architecture that remains across Spain. The Great Mosque of Cordoba, with its iconic red and white arches, is a testament to the grandeur of their reign. The Alhambra in Granada, with its stunning courtyards and intricate designs, is another example of Moorish architectural brilliance. These buildings, along with others, demonstrate the wealth and sophistication of the Moorish rulers and their lasting impact on European architecture. While the Moors were known for their military prowess, it was their visionary leadership, diplomatic skill, and commitment to culture and learning that truly defined their rule. Their influence shaped the history of Spain and Europe, and their legacy continues to be felt today in the fields of science, art, and architecture. The decline of Moorish Spain was a gradual process that took place over several centuries. While the Moors had ruled much of the Iberian Peninsula for nearly 800 years, the Christian Reconquista, a long series of military campaigns launched by Christian kingdoms, began to push them back, bit by bit. The Reconquista wasn't just a military conquest, it was also a religious and cultural struggle, driven by a desire to reclaim territory that had once been under Christian rule. By the 11th century, the once unified Moorish territories had fractured into several smaller kingdoms. The central authority of the Caliphate of Cordoba weakened as different factions fought for control, leading to political instability and internal conflict. These smaller kingdoms, or taifas, were vulnerable to external pressures from the Christian kingdoms to the north, who were steadily gaining strength and territory. One of the most significant turning points in the decline of the Moors came with the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa in 1212. This pivotal battle saw a coalition of Christian forces from Castile, Aragon, and Navarre decisively defeat the Almohads, a powerful North African Muslim dynasty that had taken control of much of southern Spain. The loss at Las Navas de Tolosa marked the beginning of the end for Moorish rule in Spain, as the Christian kingdoms, emboldened by their victory, began to capture city after city in the south. Despite this setback, the Moors held on to Granada, the last remaining Muslim stronghold, for another 2 centuries. Granada became a symbol of Moorish resilience, with its rulers fighting desperately to maintain their independence against the encroaching Christian forces. The Kingdom of Granada, under the rule of the Nasrid dynasty, became a final bastion of Moorish power in Iberia. During this time, the Alhambra in Granada was constructed, an architectural marvel that remains one of the greatest examples of Islamic art and architecture in the world. However, the end was inevitable. In 1492, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, united under the Catholic monarchs, completed the Reconquista by capturing Granada, effectively ending Muslim rule in Spain. The last Muslim king of Granada, Boabdil, was forced to surrender the city to the Catholic monarchs in a ceremony that marked the final chapter of the Moors' reign in Europe. The fall of Granada was not just a military defeat, it was a cultural and spiritual loss for the Muslim world. In the years that followed, the Catholic monarchs ordered the forced conversion or expulsion of Muslims and Jews from Spain. The Moors, once the rulers of a vast empire in Europe, were now marginalized and persecuted, their contributions to European civilization all but erased from the official narrative of history. The Reconquista had a profound impact on Spain and the wider European world. It marked the beginning of a new era of religious and cultural homogeneity, where Catholicism became the dominant force in Spain. The expulsions of Muslims and Jews and the forced conversions of many led to a dramatic transformation of Spain's social fabric, and the cultural richness that the Moors had brought to the Iberian Peninsula began to fade away. Yet, even as their political power waned, the influence of the Moors never truly disappeared. Their architectural, agricultural, and intellectual contributions to Spain continued to shape the culture and development of Europe, even long after they had been driven from the continent. The legacy of the Moors in Spain and Europe lives on, not just in the magnificent buildings they left behind, but also in the knowledge, ideas, and innovations they introduced to the Western world. Though the Moors' political reign in Spain came to an end with the fall of Granada in 1492, their influence on European culture and society did not vanish. In fact, many of their contributions have remained embedded in European life, even as the Moors themselves were pushed out of the Iberian Peninsula. From architecture to language, agriculture to science, the legacy of the Moors continues to shape modern Europe in profound and often overlooked ways. One of the most visible remnants of Moorish rule is in the architecture that still stands across Spain. The Alhambra, with its intricate tile work, stunning courtyards, and flowing water features, is perhaps the most famous example of Moorish design. Its stunning beauty has captivated visitors for centuries, and its influence can be seen in European architecture long after the Moors left Spain. The Great Mosque of Cordoba, with its iconic red and white striped arches, is another lasting symbol of Moorish architectural ingenuity, and it was later converted into a Christian cathedral, preserving both Islamic and Christian cultural influences in one space. Beyond architecture, the Moors made groundbreaking contributions to agriculture. When they arrived in Spain, the Moors introduced advanced irrigation systems that allowed them to cultivate crops like rice, sugar, and citrus fruits, plants that were not native to the region. These innovations not only transformed the landscape of Spain, but also revolutionized agriculture throughout Europe. Crops like oranges, lemons, and olive oil became staples of the Mediterranean diet, and many of these crops were spread throughout Europe, forever changing its agricultural practices. The Moors also had a profound impact on language. While the majority of their influence on European languages has been absorbed and normalized over time, many words from Arabic have made their way into Spanish and other European languages. Words like azúcar, sugar, aceituna, olive, and alcohol are all derived from Arabic, reflecting the Moors' lasting impact on European culture and economy. Spanish, in particular, has retained many Arabic terms, especially in fields like science, agriculture, and architecture. In science and mathematics, the Moors made contributions that would shape the development of Europe for centuries. They introduced the numeral system, including the concept of zero, which would later be passed on to Europe through scholars in Spain. Moorish mathematicians also contributed to the fields of algebra, geometry, and trigonometry, laying the groundwork for the scientific revolution in Europe. The works of scholars like Ibn Sina, Avicenna, and Ibn Rushd, Averroes, were translated into Latin and played a critical role in the intellectual awakening of Europe during the Renaissance. In medicine, the Moors were centuries ahead of their European counterparts. Ibn Rushd's medical texts were studied by European doctors, and the Moors made groundbreaking discoveries in the treatment of diseases, the importance of hygiene, and even surgical practices. Their knowledge of anatomy and the human body was far more advanced than that of many European physicians at the time. These innovations were passed on to Europe and laid the foundation for modern medicine. Finally, the Moors also influenced European culture in more subtle ways, through music, literature, and philosophy. The Moors' poetic traditions, which blended Islamic and local influences, inspired the growth of poetry and literature in Spain, leaving a legacy of rich, lyrical works. Their philosophical contributions, particularly in the realms of reason and logic, helped shape the intellectual landscape of Europe. The Moors' impact on Europe cannot be overstated. While their political power in the Iberian Peninsula was eventually extinguished, their cultural, scientific, and agricultural legacies continued to influence European societies for centuries. The very fabric of European civilization was shaped by their contributions, and their achievements should not be forgotten. As we look at the world today, we see the traces of the Moors in the very infrastructure of modern Europe, in the buildings we admire, the crops we eat, and the knowledge we build upon. As we reflect on the history of the Moors and their profound influence on Europe, we realize that their legacy is not just a footnote in history. It's a cornerstone of European civilization. From their groundbreaking contributions in science and medicine to the cultural and architectural masterpieces they left behind, the Moors shaped the very foundations of modern Europe. Their story is one of resilience, intellectual brilliance, and cultural exchange that enriched the world for centuries. The Moors weren't just rulers, they were visionaries who created a society that valued knowledge, innovation, and diversity. Their rule in Spain marked a golden age, one that transformed Europe in ways that are still felt today. And yet their contributions remain underappreciated in many historical narratives. By uncovering the real history of the Moors, we not only honor their incredible legacy, but also challenge the narratives that have often overlooked the contributions of African and Muslim civilizations to the development of Europe. It's crucial to recognize the full scope of history, including the roles that diverse peoples and cultures have played in shaping the world as we know it. So next time you admire the Alhambra, study a scientific breakthrough, or enjoy a citrus fruit, remember the Moors, African black kings who once ruled parts of Europe and forever changed the course of history. If you found this video enlightening and want to uncover more hidden histories and untold stories, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. And don't forget to share this video so others can discover the incredible legacy of the Moors too.